Yeah, now you can start, madam.
From the beginning or from the middle?
Yeah, from the beginning you can start. Yeah.
Okay. Hello dear students, welcome to Global IAS and today's The Hindu analysis. So there are very interesting subjects to discuss on, so let's start it. Let's start the discussion today. So these are the 8 topics we are going to discuss. Now first article is very interesting one about the Africa. We see that in newspaper we get very few articles about Africa, and recently there has been visit by the Jash Minister External Affairs, that is S.J. Shankar. So we have tried to forge the relationship with the Africa. So in this article, we will try to see what are the models of China's development in Africa vis-a-vis India's model of development in Africa. So first of all, we will see about how the China is trying to make inroads in Africa. And Africa is in history, if you have seen, it is criticized as a dark, it has been like said as a dark continent, and the neo-colonialism in new or the other way is being done by the new powers, and China's model is somewhat like new colonial kind of model. It is kind of exploitative model that is taking the resources of that country for its own benefit. Now China is among the largest trading partners, and because it is the largest trading partner, so it gets a lot of benefits there, and it is also the single biggest creditor, so it provides the cheap loan. The cheap loan for infrastructure or like banking facilities has developed in the Africa. So this way Chinese presence has very much in Africa. Its corporations like big MNCs are there, dominate the region's infrastructure market, and are now entering the agriculture infrastructure sector. See, Africa is very like by nature it is gifted with lot of resources. If we say the like natural resources, agriculture resources, minerals, water resources. So it has a lot of resources. So China is trying to exploit that resources, and by making infrastructure, it is trying to make inroads there. So first, so this is the important part, that is China will provide cheap loan and is the biggest trader. And now this article will focus on agriculture and infrastructure sector. So while access to China's natural resources is untapped market, is Africa like very, and even India has not much made explorations in Africa. So its market is very much untapped, unlike European market, Indian market, like Asian market. So, but the African continent is the one which is still untapped, and support for one China policy are the primary drivers of Chinese engagement with the region. We know that China is forwarding its one China policy with the Taiwan, and these African countries, these are 53 in number, and if it could get the vote of these countries, then it has a voice in the international forum if some country does not try to follow one China policy. So this way it is trying to get the support also. So it is a like quid pro quo. China is providing cheap loans, so in the back it is trying to get the support for its one China policy. Now China is investing in agriculture infrastructure sector, so that is it is building industrial parks, that is the special economic zones in the Africa are attracting low cost, labor intensive manufacturing units are relocating from China. See, this is a phenomena which happens even in US. When the cost of production got increased, then they shifted to the developing countries, Africa. In China, now in China, the same thing is arising. The cost of production is increasing. Now they are looking for the developed. So the cost. So now they are the one where they are shifting their business. Mostly the manufacturing. This kind of business is mostly shifted low cost and labor intensive manufacturing units. Okay. Here we will get the cheap labor. So that was the case back then in India and China. So these MNCs used to from the West used to shift in China. Now the cost of living and standard has increased in China. So they are shifting as a better place to Africa. And for that, they have done a lot of investment there. So not so China, what is trying to do is trying to build its brand. Like there is a brand, so brand China. It is a part of the soft power diplomacy. In international politics, we have seen there are the soft power and the hard power. So soft power, which works at subconscious level, it's a hegemonic power. So China is like trying. China is sacrificing short-term gains for building its brand China. Okay, like there is a brand America, brand Europe. Similarly, brand China, it is making. They want to dominate the market in the long term because like they are ignoring the short term, whatever the losses are happening, they're putting a lot of investment and without expectation of returns within the short time. But in the long term, they are the one who are going to lay the foundation of this Africa is there. So China was the first to come. Now China is making the structures there. So who will, if other country, suppose India is coming now, India is the second one to come. So if it is going to work in the China in Africa, then it has to follow the Chinese standards. So Chinese standards in the host country. So because the infrastructure, all these things are already developed by China, and we will also use we can also use that structure. So for this, they are trying to develop Chinese standards in the host country is Africa. Now for this is about the infrastructure sector, but in agriculture what they are doing, they have set up 20 ATDCS, means agriculture technology demonstration centers. See, Africa has lot of potential in agriculture sector, similar to like this Asian region. There's a lot of monsoon and this kind of a variety of crops can be grown there. So the Chinese agronomists are working on developing new crop varieties. So they are like investing in the maize production to produce bioethanol, and similarly they are producing various cash crops so that they can earn there. They are buying the huge lands and using the cheap African labor and getting the increased crop yields. So this is same thing we see that the Africans were always at disadvantage. They were always taken as a cheap labor first in the like slave trade which happened between Europe, America, and Africa. Now the China is going to the going to do that in different way. Then these ATDCs partner with local universities, local African universities. They are partnering and they're conducting workshops and classes for officials and providing training and lease equipments. These equipments like machines, tractors, threshers. So these are like heavy investment tractors and threshers. So these machines are provided to smallholder farmers because they do not have that much capacity to invest in these machines. So these are being provided to these farmers. So in the short term, they are happy with the kind of investment China has been doing, but in a long term, that can be detrimental to their sovereignty. Now, Africa, China's relations, they look good on the top, but they are becoming complex with growing insular diaspora. So the people who are staying in China, so who are people from China has settled in the Africa, and now they are very much isolated from China. So this kind of things are happening. Those who do not want to stay in China, generally that kind of population is shifting here, and those who have settled did not do much with the much contact with the China. So they have become insulated, means they are into themselves. And the lopsided trade means it is in the favor of China. Lopsided means not equal. So this is a balance, and this is very at high and this is at very low. So this is lopsided situation. So competition with the local business to local businessman, local African businessman are there. So that kind of tension is there. Africans are wiping out the Chinese are wiping out the African local businessman, and there's a negative perception accompanied by the greater political and socio-economic linkages. So they are trying to interfere in the local social custom traditions of African life. So there is also resentment against this thing. Okay, because the Africans, mostly tribal communities are there. They have their own way of life, and China is trying to interfere. So they will definitely not like that. So there seems to be a gap. So it is article telling about the gap between the skills transferred, because what China is doing, China is providing training to these African people. They can go to China and learn, because in China the language of the medium is mostly Mandarin, and the technology is very much different from what the Africa requires. So their requirements are different. The requirements are different, and the kind of solutions which China is providing is not applicable in the African conditions. So that is trying to say the ground realities, they are very different. In some cases the technology is not available locally, so whatever the technology they are teaching to African people, so they cannot be implemented, because they do not have resources to implement that kind of laboratory sophisticated technology is not in Africa. So they have learned all these sophisticated technologies in China and but cannot implement here. So before giving any kind of like a very sophisticated training, they should plan to build infrastructure for the same. Now, what are the takeaway, like what we can learn from China Africa relations? So these are the like takeaways. So India Africa, like we are always, if we have learned in international relations, are that we are for cooperation, we are not for exploitation. So what the Chinese model is, that kind of exploitative neo-colonial. So we are cooperating with the African people, and even if we are like China is taking support of one China policy, we are also taking African support for UNSC permanent seat. So we are also looking for their support, but not in a way that China is doing it. So we are focusing on the capacity building. Capacity building means we are investing in developing the human resource, because this is such a investment which will definitely make the people capable to do their own development of their own country. Instead of like Chinese people putting there, and they are utilizing the resources, getting the skills, instead of we provide the skills to the people there and do their human resource and do their development. Okay, so the initiatives that we have taken, like India Africa Institute of Agriculture, we are also investing in agriculture and rural development in Malawi. So there we have done the partnership, and we are providing the soft loans. Okay, soft loans are the loans under which conditions are very flexible, depending on the like their condition to repay. Okay, unlike the tight loans where the conditions are very hard. Then we are providing them machinery and the acquisition of the farmlands. If they want to acquire, some poor farmer is there, they want to acquire the farmland, so we are providing the loan for that also. There are also proposals for jointly brand, because there are some regions in Africa which have the similar kind of soil for like the Kerala. So both of them can work together, and they can develop the cashew nuts. So they can Africa Kollam cashew. Kollam is a region in Kerala. So the our so it has increased almost 8 times our cashew production. Okay, similar ideas. So these kind of the joint areas where we can work together is a win-win situation for both the countries, not the exploitative model. So where the state government and civil society, so we have to identify the opportunities and then we have to invest them in them. Okay. Now the what are the grievances? This is about India and China. Now how Africans feels about India and China. So the African has said that in the like international forum, they say that even though we are such a huge population and so many countries are there, they still do not have the global representation. They are lacking. Well, if you see take any body of global importance like UNSC or any body like NSG, so these are the bodies where African representation, there is no representative from African continent. So this continent is left behind, and like their voices are overlooked. Okay, overlooked in global discourse. So whether it is a climate change or any kind of issue is there, whether it about terrorism, they are not being taken on board. Okay, in that sense India has consistently chosen well to underline the development partnership with the African priorities. So our model is like very much dependent on like very much like taking into consideration African priorities. If they are also happy with the project, that they do not feel that they are being exploited, or it is also their requirement, then only we'll go with the developmental partnership in that. Unlike China, with the investment, the kind of investment it is doing, it is only for its own sake. The way it has done in Sri Lanka, it has constructed a port in Sri Lanka, but that was of no use. So it was an investment just for its own security purpose. So that kind of investment, geostrategic investments, we are not doing here. We are doing whatever is the African priority. So this is the difference between India and Chinese investments in Africa. Now moving on to the next topic, the RBI has said, because if we said this is a statement from RBI, that it is saying that GSAP 2.0, the first purchase of 20,000 crore GSECs on July 8. So RBI is involved in the GSAP program. So earlier GSAP program, GSAP 1.0 has been done successfully. So what is the need for that? Because we know that corona pandemic is there, government is cash is strapped, and it requires money to do welfare activities. So what is the program is that the government is there. So RBI is purchasing the government bonds and giving the money to the government. Okay. So at a fixed rate, fixed time and fixed rate of interest, these bonds will be repurchased by the government. Okay, so these are the bonds. So RBI has said that the first purchase of the government securities, this is the G6 government bonds for an aggregate 20,000 under the government security acquisition program 2.0. So this is the second round, will be conducted on July 8. So the main purpose of this is to provide liquidity to the government to do welfare activities. Now about this Twitter, government and Twitter are at the loggerhead, and there are uh, there are the warnings being given to the intermediaries that they have to do compliance, but Twitter failed to do the compliance. They were set to appoint the chief compliance officer, residence officer, and the nodal officer, and they have not done this so far. So they have been removed as a the kind of protection they have been given. So they have lost the immunity given to an intermediary under the section 79 of the IT Act. So under IT Act, they were given like a safety. So that has been taken away from Twitter. Now this is about like we have seen in the January, February that farmer protests were going on since the government brought in 3 farm laws, and government what it is putting forward that since so far the government has purchased this that 43.3 million ton of wheat from the farmer. This is the highest all-time high. Okay, that is about the 11% over the previous winter crop season. So this much high procurement has been done by the government, and this has increased the farmers' income to 3 lakh per capita. And this money has been given by the DBT scheme, that is direct benefit transfer scheme. So it is trying to show that farmers are unnecessarily agitated, and government is doing all the efforts to provide them due compensation. So that is for this news. So the MSP is provided through the fair this FCI. Now India to be the second largest driver of gas demand in Asia, PEX IEA. We have seen in international politics that these countries like China, India, these are the growing economies, and they are very much like energy starved also. So they are the one who are like going to consume the energy in the future. So this after China, India is the next one. in the race. So we are the second largest driver in the gas demand in Asia. Okay, second means after China. This is the International Energy Agency. It has been the report has been published this data. Now you'll see in detail what are the points. So like India's gas, so what this report is saying that India's gas consumption is expected to increase by 25 billion cubic meters in 2020 to 2024. So this much is a very huge amount, because we have installed lot of like industries are there, and a lot of and chemical energies are there. So in that like natural gas is very much used. So our energy consumption is increasing day by day. And it is said that electricity or the energy is directly proportional to the consumption, the per capita consumption of energy is directly proportional to the development of the country. If the country is developed, then it will consume more energy. And for the and it can be said other way, for the development, country requires energy. Okay, so which translates into a 9% annual growth rate. So this is like for annually, like every year we will be consuming 9%. The growth will be like consumption demand will be 9%. Okay, so India plans to increase its share of gas in the energy basket. Like our energy basket comprises oil and petrol, then natural gas, then nuclear power. So these kind of different power, hydropower, biogas. So these are our energy basket. So in this, we are trying to increase the share of gas to 15% by 2030. So currently we are 6%, and we are expecting to do it more than double, that is 15% by 2030. In the coming decade, we are going to increase it. The natural gas is good also because it is less polluting. So IE noted that India is set to emerge as the second largest driver, that is the headline, after China, and the fifth largest contributor globally. In India also, we are doing the domestic production. We are importing also, and also we are doing domestic production, but this production is not enough, and we have to import some amount. So we are the fifth one in the domestic production. After first is China, Iran, Russia, and the United States. So indigenous, whatever we are producing in our own country, that is about 51%. It will contribute to only 51% of country's requirement. So next rest 49 we have to get import. So 51 we are producing, and 49 we are importing. Okay, so domestic domestic output increased to 19.1%. So we are trying to increase it, and increase it to 19.1%. So total consumption, and like it is telling about the May data, it was 4.3% higher. If we compare, we are generally comparing with the previous year and with the same month. So in the previous year, the same month, it was, if we compare to that, we are consuming, it is 4.3% higher. So in 2021, the India's gas consumption is expected to rise by, like by this year, it will rise by 4.5%. So it is last year 2020, it was 4 compared to the last year 4.3%, and by this year it will be 4.5%. So every year it is increasing, and it was projected to be 9% in the coming decades. Now the demand for the natural gas in the domestic traditional market depended on fertilizers. In natural gas is required for fertilizer production. So these are the areas which consume natural gas. Natural gas is a raw material for these industries, like for the fertilizer industry and for the power sector, then CGD entities, consumer goods, and then refineries and petrochemical industries. So here we get like there's a demand for the natural gas. Okay, so they require natural gas as a raw material. Okay, almost like 2/3 of the India's, like for these 4 years, if we try to see the demand, the expansion is seen to come primarily from substitution of liquid fuel to gas. Now, what we are trying to do, liquid fuel, that is the oil and petroleum from the Saudi Arabia. These countries are there in the Middle East. So we are trying to procure the liquid fuel. Now we are trying to do substitution. Instead of liquid fuel, we are trying to move on to gas. So the government, the plan is to how to expand the capacity. We are trying to expand the retail outlets in the next 5 years. Now, right now we have 2500 CNG stations. We want to increase it to 10,000, almost 5 times the capacity of present. Now, this is a good news and it is a proud moment for India, because India is very much acclaimed for its IT technology, and the CoWIN platform, which is developed by India, is very much hailed as a very strong and very informative platform. So this platform India has used for doing vaccination, and now the PM Modi has given it to the international community as a public good. So this will be utilized by other countries also. Now the PM has offered India's CoWIN platform as a digital public good. So now it will be used by other countries to combat COVID-19. So this CoWIN means COVID Vaccine Intelligence Network Platform. Okay. So this is how the CoWIN platform looks like. So all the vaccination related data will be feeded into this. Now this is a very important article which has come, and it is about the carbon burden. We know that a lot of in conferences from Kyoto to Paris are being held, and they are emphasizing on reducing the emissions, because the global warming can do a lot of damage to the damage, and climate change is one such phenomena. And the most immediate effect will be seen on poor population, because they are the very much dependent on agriculture and allied activities, and the major the one who are going to be affected are the developing and the poor countries. So that is why there's a divide between the developed and developing countries over how to tackle this climate change. So this is also one in the league of this how they are going to share the carbon burden. And like EU must drop its carbon border adjustment proposal. So European Union has proposed this CBAP. Okay, this is a carbon border adjustment proposal. This proposal has been put forward. So let us understand what is this proposal. So this carbon tax is there. Carbon tax, we are very well aware that if some country is making some product which is consuming lot of energy and emitting a lot of carbon in the space, in the air, then that country has to pay carbon tax for those polluting industries. So what the US and EU has to said about this carbon tax is that they want to levy, so they want to put a tax. So there are the countries like, these are the developed countries. India and China are there. So they are the developing countries, and their most of the industries are the polluting ones. They are the traditional and conventional industries. They have not used sophisticated technology. So a lot of pollutions and emissions are happening in these regions. And these Western countries all have done this in the past during the Industrial Revolution. If you see the Europe and the America, but now they have the capacity, they have money and research and development facility, so they are moving on to the cleaner technologies. But these are the poor countries, and they do not have that capacity to switch on so fast to these technologies. So there was a promise to give $100 billion by these countries to these countries, like developing countries. Okay, so what the recent thing is proposed, that the countries which are producing goods using polluting industries, they have to pay taxes. So that will be carbon tax. So EU and want to discourage import of carbon intensive goods. So suppose there are some goods which require a lot of energy for their production, like iron products where coal is used. So these kind of products, they will say, they are saying, if they are like if these countries are exporting, then we will apply the carbon tax on them. Okay, they will levy this to discourage the import of the carbon intensive goods. So they want that those countries, if they want to sell that kind of product like steel to their country, then they have to switch to cleaner technology, otherwise they will be subjected to the carbon tax. Okay, it is to push the manufacturing jurisdiction. Manufacturing jurisdiction means countries like India, China, they are using that kind of old technologies for some processes like into cutting emissions. So they want so this is a like very coercive measure. This is not a like a deliberative measure where countries should understand that there are some problem with these countries, these are poor countries, and it is about their livelihood. So instead of pushing, there should be some discussions. Okay, so it is inequity, it is not equal. So it is saying that this is measure is inequality on the poor countries in appropriating climate responsibilities. See, in the history, these countries, Western and European countries, have done a lot of pollution and they have been the biggest emitter, but now they are trying to shed away from their responsibilities and putting all the blame on these eastern part, that they are the like it is a divide between the west and the east. So they are being blamed for the pollution, and the way they are charging the carbon tax on the carbon intensive products is unequal. Okay, so our environment minister Javed Prakash Javadkar has said that why don't the international community see that we are doing our efforts to increase the green cover, and a lot of technology investments have been done. So what he is saying that this is unfair and iniquitous. Okay, then US and EU are proposing carbon border adjustment tariffs and will apply to imports with heavy emission trails. So that is the same thing. Okay, so this is the like carbon tax. The name of this carbon tax is carbon border adjustment tariff. So border means if it is coming from these countries to this country, so this is apply on the border. Okay, so carbon border. Now Javadkar has said that India is making significant, we are doing a lot of investment in renewable energies, green bonds, and a lot of like local solutions are also being taken to move to the greener energy, and we have increased forest cover, that is also appreciable. And if we see that what India has done and what developed nations like mostly the Western countries have done, so they have failed to fulfill the Green Climate Fund commitment. So in the Paris Agreement 2015 was there, Paris Agreement 2015. In that agreement, it was said that developed country will give $100 billion to the developing countries. But now it has been delayed to 2025. So it is saying that they have failed. Okay. So instead of like fulfilling their commitment to give $100 billion, they are doing going other way and putting taxes on the countries of developing world. Okay, so this is kind of unequal injustice. So developed nation, the EU members, the US, Canada, and the UK have consistently failed to factor in the historical burden. So historical burden is that in the past during industrial evolution, they have taken the advantage, but now not giving any space to the developing world to do their own development. So in the Paris Agreement, the target was set as -2-degree rise from the pre-industrial level by 2100. So if we are going to invest so much in these technologies and pushing the people to move forward without any adequate funds from the developed countries, that is $100 billion. So what it will do, it will push the people of the developing countries into the poverty, because the government will not be left with fund to do welfare measures, and it will push them to poverty. So that apart, that against the backdrop pandemic, so pandemic has also aggravated the situation, and this border tariff will like stall the growth. It will like stop the growth in the like in this condition will this is same for the India and China. So in the pandemic situation, we see that a very less amount of export and imports are happening. And on the top of that, if you are putting these kind of taxes, then it will crunch the economies, especially India and China, because they are the one which are the big exporters in developing countries. So not only broader adjustment tariff will make fossil-based power plants in developed world more competitive. So these kind of tariffs, if they are putting, then this will make it very, very competitive for there. Because if you are trying to move to shift to some areas where this kind of taxes are not there, so that is not this kind of incentive is not allowed right now. So this will disincentivize the companies from moving to the new investment, moving or the new investment to low cost jurisdiction. Suppose in some area there the tax carbon tax is very high. If you cannot move to the area where carbon tax is low, because it will apply the similar kind of like punishment will be there. Okay, so no clarity on when EU will end. So it is saying about European Union and the Western countries like US, they are giving a lecture to the developing countries that they should reduce the carbon intensive industries. But what about them? They are giving a lot of credits to their own heavily polluted industries. And on the top of that, European Parliament has voted to keep these allocations intact for such industries. So they are saying that we are not going to reduce this carbon credits. Carbon credits is like you can do pollution, but you have to pay this carbon credit. So that kind of flexibility they are doing for their own industries. But when it comes to developing countries, they are putting such kind of taxes which will make our products very uncompetitive in the world. Okay, so what India's So what India is saying, India is not saying that all the work, all the responsibility, if in the history that all the responsibility should be taken by the West. It is not saying. It is saying that we all should come work together. Okay. So we want that there, but there should be some degree of proportionality. Like the one who has most polluted, he should contribute more. Who has done the most, he should contribute more. And the one who has started late, like India, China, they have started late in the industrialization process, so they should be given time and funds so that they can move to the cleaner technologies. So that is India is saying that we are not asking for much, but there should be some degree of proportionality. So this is about the proportionality, like it is directly proportional, like who has done the most pollution should contribute more. The International Energy Agency, right now I have shown you one article where International Agency has projected that India's demand for energy consumption, especially natural gas, is going to increase. Then it has said that to do net zero emission means to reduce the carbon emissions to zero, then we have to like by 2050, if we want to do this, then we have to show it has shown that how steep the gradient of emission reduction has to be. So like suppose if you see that it is a graphical representation, is the timeline for 2050, and if I take 2020, so if it's like carbon emission was going on like this, and we are making reduction. So if we want to reduce the carbon reduction, then we have to reduce it to zero. Then we have to take a lot of efforts. Okay, so more equitable approach. So whatever the approach the right now the European countries and US is proposing, that is inequitable. So we are expecting for equitable approach, or what we can say proportional approach. Would be with historical meters turning net zero much earlier. So we are saying that the historical emitters are the Western countries, so they should give the timeline, whether the timeline that they should whatever the quota of pollution they have to do, they should do it fast, so that the space, the carbon space should be left for the other countries so that they can do whatever the developmental works, and for that a lot of industries which are energy intensive, they can be put to their potential, and with that, if when they are also coming to a decent level, and it will help in reducing the poverty. So that is what we are expecting for equitable approach, proportional approach. Okay. So in the developed world, we need to be more conscientious. So it is saying that developed world, that is the Western world, they should be more like mindful of the problems of the like climate action. They should not play the this kind of tactics with the developing worlds. The EU may tom its European Green Deal. Tom means boast about or proud. So European deal was Green Deal was they were like very much boasting about this deal, and what India is saying that they should talk about preserving and increasing its forest cover by keeping agricultural activity that requires deforestation limited. So this deal was that they are going to reduce the agricultural activity, because if you want to do agriculture, then you have to clear the forest. So forest cover will be gone. So to reduce the agriculture, we have to do reduction in the agriculture activity expansion. Now the other important article which is very much in news. So it is about what G7's corporate tax proposal mean for India. Recently, we have seen last week that the G7 meeting has been conducted. India is not part of G7. It is mostly about the developed countries and the one which have very high GDP and purchasing power capacity. So these are the part of G7 nations, and mostly the MNCs, that is the digital companies like Facebook, Yahoo, Google, belong to these nations, but they have their branches and subsidiaries in developing countries like India, China, Africa. So it is related to them also, but they are not part of the discussion so far in G7. But when the G20 meeting will be conducted, then India will definitely will go for its own proposal, because in India we have already have equalization taxes and introduced in 2016, and we see that how it is going to overlap with the proposals put forward by the G7. Let's get started. Now the G7, it is about the finance minister of those countries have agreed for a global minimum corporate tax of 15%. Just remember this figure. It is a very important figure, 15%. Okay, so wherever they are working, at least the minimum, it should not go below this. So 0%. So so some countries are providing 0%, like tax havens are there. Tax havens like Cayman Islands or Switzerland. So these are the countries where they are not putting any kind of tax. So at the minimum, they have to tax. Every country has to tax wherever their presence is there. Minimum 15% they have to pay wherever jurisdiction they are working. And the taxation of profits based on country of sale. So what will be the basis? It will be whatever the sale is there. On that basis, they have to pay 15% on that. So it is developed to expanding taxing rights in the market jurisdictions. So like in India, so in US, then this country. So these are the MNCs. These are mostly working in these countries have lot of youngsters, young population. So this is like they have very much subscriber base, or internet facilities have also increased, internet infrastructure facilities. So the subscriber base are very high in India and China region. So these are called as a market jurisdiction. Market jurisdiction means the countries where those kind of rules will be applied, like Indian jurisdiction, Chinese jurisdiction, and addressing the ongoing risk from the structures. So structures means infrastructure, whatever they have started. Like Apple is there; it has offices in this country and this country. So these are the structures. So these offices are the structures allowing MNC to shift to the jurisdiction where they subject to no or very low tax. So what earlier their tendency was that whichever country was providing them with the low tax, so they were shifting to that region. So that will not be possible now, because at least minimum they have to pay 15%. Okay, so this kind of benefit they are no longer given. So MNCs, that is multinational corporations, must pay taxes on at least 20% of the profit exceeding 10% margin in the country where they have sales. So they are saying that this much on the profit they have to pay. Okay. In other words, an MNC may pay tax in a jurisdiction based on generation of revenues and sale, irrespective of physical presence. So if some country, if some company is there in US, but it does not have any office in India, it does not have any office in India or other country, but it is a digital company. So it will work. It does not feel requirement to set up office, but it has the users. The customers are in other country. Customers or users are in different country all over the globe. So all over the globe, it has a customer. So it does not matter whether they have office in this country or not, but they have customers. So it is dependent on the customers, not country. So wherever you have customer, you have to pay the taxes to that country. Okay. Because earlier they were saying that we do not have offices in, like example, India. So we are not liable to give tax to India. But now it is saying that your customers are Indians. You have to pay tax to the Indian government, because it is the Indian people's money which is being going to these companies. Okay. Then in other words, it's like it is saying that irrespective of physical presence, so whether you have office in that country or not, you have to pay that tax. So countries like India have a larger consumer base. So I told you India, what are the reasons for larger consumer base? Like population and then infrastructure. So if this will be applied, if this will be done, then it will be a good for India and China, these kind of countries where the lot of population is there. So the average corporation tax globally has fallen from 24 to 40%. Like the taxes which were being extracted from these MNCs was going very high from 24 to limit. Okay. So lowest now what they have said, G7 has set the lowest limit 15%, and highest limit can be anything. So it is generally 24 to 40%. So it is going to 24 to 40%, but it cannot go below 15%. So this is a very slab rate where the taxes are being applied. So they have said about the minimum one, because earlier some countries were providing 0% also. So they were shifting their bases to these countries. So that to avoid this, we have put this 15% as a minimum floor. Okay, the proposed rate is higher than 12.5% recommended by OEC in Pillar 2. So earlier they have proposed 12.5%, but now they have agreed that it should be 15%. Okay, so this is significantly increased corporate tax revenue across the economy. So it is a happy situation that all the economies where they have that the customers are there, like Facebook, Yahoo, these have lot of customers there. So now the tax will be 15%. So this will be like a big growth in the country's revenue. Now it is telling about the equalization levy, and there was one question in 2018 about the equalization levy, and Indian government has before announcing this digital tax by G7 countries, has taken its own measure in 2016 and has introduced equalization levy. It is similar to this tax, that is a 15% digital tax. So it is putting a tax on the digital advertising of the revenue of the MNCs like Facebook, Google. Because if you see the Facebook, there are a lot of ads. If you open the page, you will see in the side tabs the lot of ads of Indian sellers. They are selling their products and advertising. So what they are doing, they are giving money to Facebook to put their advertisement. So they are getting money from the Indian citizen. So Indian citizen is giving money to Facebook, and that so to tax this money, whatever the money this Indian is giving to the Facebook, so that will be taxed. So that is called as the equalization levy. This was done on the Facebook, Google, and other companies which were involved in this process. So in 2020, it was expanded to include foreign entities selling goods and services online to customers in India. So this was expanded. Okay. Earlier it was about the advertisement. Now it is about the selling also. Now with G7 countries, they have agreed to tax based on customer location. Earlier they were not agreeing on this customer location. Earlier they were seeing the country wise, like whether the country has office or not, then no tax will be levied on MNCs. But now it is saying that it is not required. Only if say, the country has significant customer presence, then they are subjected to this levy. India stands vindicated. So what the India's stand was in 2016. So that is that is going in the same line. However, there has been overlap between the equalization levy and the proposed tax. So it is almost similar, but the final details are there, which will be discussed in the G20 meeting. So the minimum tax of 15% will impact the Indian MNC with the presence in low. But the same applies to Indian MNCs also, because in India we have Tata, Infosys. They are also have a global presence. Okay, Indian MNCs are also having the global presence. In UK, we see that a lot of investment has been done by the Tata. So they have. So this will apply to with the MNCs with presence in low or no tax jurisdiction like UAE, Cayman, etc. And there are like questions of the shell companies also. It is saying that these kind of companies which are not doing any kind of significant business, and they are established in like Cayman Island or UAE. So this will apply to these kind of companies also, like minimum 15%. These like if some Indian company which is settled in UAE, earlier they were taxing 0%, but now they have to charge at least 15% from them. Okay, so this will be at a deterrent for setting up such a structure. So it will like the tax havens for their shell companies. So this will like stop this, because now the Indians who are like saving their black money in the other countries, so it will stop this also, because in the name of some shell company they are not doing any business, but they are like routing the money. So with this 15% tax, it is a good for India's jurisdiction. So investment structures will be devised based on commercial and economic conditions, and tax may not be driving factor. So it is saying that tax, okay, it is saying that this will be good, because earlier the companies were shifting where they were getting zero tax or no tax. So they were shifting. So tax was the driving factor. So tax was the driving factor that time. But now since it has been increased to 15%, so now more this is not an incentive for the companies to do the business. Now the new thing, the priority will be commercial and economic conditions, whether the country is providing law and order, the economy is good, the good market is there. So this will be the more determining factor, not the tax, because it has been increased to 15%. So state of justice report is there. It says that so far it has calculated that India loses $10 billion every year to global tax. Before like equalization levy, we were not taxing these MNCs, and they were like the MNCs who were having the significant base in India. So we were losing 10 billion. So it was a huge amount. And after this digital tax of 15%, we will be getting a huge amount. It's a handsome amount. So that is for this discussion. And these are the two questions for the mains I'll discuss with you. So first is about discuss new opportunities in India-Africa relations and challenges vis-a-vis China. So in this, I'll discuss the frame. So we have to discuss the Chinese model and India model. And then we have to tell about the problem which the Africans are facing with the foreign investment. And then the way forward that we should do look for the African priority and put forward their views in the global forum, because they are not able to put forward, they are not represented in the global forum. Then second is about the effect of new digital tax regime on globalization, especially MNCs. We see that MNCs are like multinational, as the name suggests. So they are helping in the globalization also, like people from different countries are coming at one workplace, and it is helping in the globalization spread of knowledge. But with the new tax regime, so how it is going to affect the globalization? Because they will what how they are going to do their business, how they are going to take their decision, whether they have to put their office in that place, or so the kind of decision they are going to take, we have to see the effect on the globalization. Now these are the meanings. That is a rebound. That is, if you're hitting somebody and you're coming back again to that place, this is about the rebound. Then vindicate. If somebody was blaming you and now the committee has shown after investigation that there was nothing wrong about you, now you are vindicated. Then is about the abeyance, means the temporary disuse or suspension, means you are not using something from long time. It's a temporary suspension, but after some time it will resume. Then leitmotif. Leitmotif means some kind of narration which is going on for a long time. It is a recurrent theme throughout the musical literary composition. Like in Paris Climate Deal, we are always saying about historical responsibilities. So it is a leitmotif of climate talks. Then Tom Tom is about the boastings about. So this is for today. I hope the discussion is fruitful to you. So subscribe to the Global IAS channel, and for any comment, for any query, just post in the comment section. Thank you. Have a great day.